So Ralf from ESL FACEIT Group, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here and to chat, just about ESL FACEIT Group, the industry, the ecosystem, and I thought there was nobody better than someone who's been there since, 2000, wasn't it?
No, it's much earlier, 1997.
1997.
My brothers and friends and me founded SK Gaming. So we went into it to try to compete and play and win some trophies.
And SK Gaming is obviously still going strong right now, and how, I actually want to talk about that a little bit in terms of actually seeing an esports organization that you founded and seeing that still continue to develop and seeing the long-term growth of a lot of esports organizations. How important do you think it is to have esports organizations that have stood the test of time? Not all, but there is now starting to be a core few. How important is that for the esports industry?
I think super important because, in every sport, it's a lot about history, legitimacy, rivalries. All that culminates in stories, right? There's tons of content to created every day, but what is the story? What is the story in the football World Cup? It's Germany playing Brazil. Right, and that has happened X times before and has Y results, and you remember that semi-final. It gives it a bigger meaning than just the game that's next in front of us. And teams are an important piece of that puzzle, and that's not the only reason why they're important, right? But that history and that legacy adds to it. And I think what we've tried, or what I was excited to be on the sportive side, to build that legacy. And now I'm excited on the organizer side to take the legacy of the teams and amplify it, because that's a little bit our job. I think that's point number one, what I like about the history of teams and the way they carry over time. But obviously more important is, this is all about the players, right? I started as a player. I founded a team not to run a team because I needed a place to play, right? So I was a player actually who built a team out of necessity. And we went on later to build ESL because there was no infrastructure for a team to play in. So it was a next necessity. And the core job of teams, I believe, is to make players more successful, to give them a home, to give them opportunity to compete, and give them the opportunity to grow. That is the core of it all. And if teams are focused around that and do a good job, then the rest follows. Then the trophies come, and with the trophies comes the legacy, and with the legacy comes the test of time to stand. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, it's a little bit, yeah.
No, yeah, I think that's perfect. And I think, to lead on to what you were saying with ESL, it's crazy to think, that it's been like 23 years or something like that the esports industry has changed so much in 20 years, where, like you were saying, that there wasn't that platform as much, the whole process, I guess the whole concept of a third-party tournament organizer didn't exist back then.
Look, and even esports team didn't exist when we started one, right? And what we did, without going too much, but we were kind of the first team back in the time who were multi-game. Because that was an alien concept as well, right? Because someone started this game and started a team. But anyway, no, a third-party tournament organizer was fresh. We were not the only one, just to be clear, right? There was a few others. But again, it was very obvious that the infrastructure for the players and the teams to do this as a living, number one. Number two, for the players to become social recognition beyond the core industry, beyond the core fans. And actually a stage, as simplistic as it sounds, to be celebrated by the core fans in the first place, all of that stuff was missing. And I think that was our purpose to bring to the table. That's why we started it. And the good news is I've been involved in many brand refreshes and, resyncing of the why of what ESL and EFG do, and that is still at the absolute core, and it's still very, very true to the purpose of what we're doing.
I want to talk about the growth of ESL as a whole, and then obviously the transition into ESL FACEIT Group. There are slight concerns, I would say, when a big corporation kind of starts taking on different companies and mergers acquire, in terms of the term monopoly gets used, I think, quite a lot. Do you think that those concerns are right, especially when you see, I think it's Vindex as well now, part of the ESL FACEIT Group, DreamHack, and FACEIT, and so on and so on. Do you think those concerns are fair and justified?
The concerns are never a problem, right? So I think to look critically at things is, I don't think there's a single case where it's wrong. It's more how you deal with it, right? Where it might have negative impact, but looking at it critically for you as the press, so to speak, is totally fine. I think when I look at it from the inside, I think there is a bunch of things. We heard on a panel yesterday here about the Microsoft Activision merger and the impact on the games industry. And the games industry is so incredibly decentralized, right? There is different platforms, mobile, PC, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, that's already 5. And none of them have like a dramatically high market share. Mobile might have, if you look at it from a simplistic perspective, but it's very, very differentiated. I think if you look at the esports industry, take a little bit that lens, right? It's very small still. It's very tiny. It's very there's many opportunities. So on the monopoly side, ESL and ESL FACEIT Group is still way too low to even remotely have the power in the market. Because if you look at monopolies, you need to look at who has the power. Right, and it's always about abuse of power. That's the problem with monopolies. And if you look at it, the players have all the power, because if they don't participate and if they're not happy, the sports will not grow. This will not work. The publishers who give the IPs to the market have absolute power over every pitch in the world on which the game is played on. They can change it within a second. So therefore, the power of a tournament organizer per se is limited. That doesn't mean it doesn't have power at all, right? So and being conscious with that is super important. But I feel that balance is done. I turn it a little bit around. What the esports industry is, it's still subscale. To stand the test of time on the global stage of sports, it still needs to grow 10x, not 2x, not 3x. It still needs to grow 10x, so that there is a powerful player who can make huge things happen, and who actually has a voice out there in politics, in mainstream media, and as well with the publishers, is actually important for the industry. That power needs to be, again, chosen wisely and done wisely. But in the first place, it's actually a way for us to grow and a way for us to protect the sport. And last but not least, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the traditional sports model, but if you think about it, there's only monopolies there, really. So if we compare it, then we're living in the most free world and the most open world you can ever consider. And that's maybe why it will always look a little bit centralized. Because sports work well if they have lots of opportunities, but clear lighthouse tournaments, I would call them. And I am Cologne, and I am Katowice. But as well as a gamer say, are these yearly lighthouse events where the industry comes together, where it can rally around and present itself at its best foot. These are actually so important for the growth of the industry. These are such important showcases of what's possible at this time. That you need to balance all of those things. But again, we have you to look critical at it.
Perfect. I think that was a well said answer. I think what's interesting as well, and something that I've always wanted to personally know as well, is from a branding standpoint. Obviously, you have DreamHack and you have ESL, and those are two still very distinct brands. Where even in a merger, like they are obviously part of the same group, but they feel completely different. Was there any thoughts of when DreamHack and ESL actually had that merger to bring them together, or was it keep them as separate entities?
So we have quite some experience with merging companies. So in 2006, we merged in the largest German games TV channel, for example, and they had an own league called Giga Liga and things like this. And we merged in smaller tournaments and leagues and things like this a lot of times actually in the history, right? 23 years is a long time. So I think we learned a lesson and did many mistakes there, to be honest. It's not that we even remotely did it all right. But when we merged with DreamHack, it was very clear from the beginning that this needs to be as independent as humanly possible from a product perspective, because it's very, very different, right? ESL is where everybody can be somebody. It's incredibly esports focused. It's trying to build these stages I spoke about to bring the best players in the world from their homes up to the stadium. That is the purpose and the mission of ESL. If you look at DreamHack, it's a place where gaming comes to life. It's a community place. It's way beyond esports. It's grassroots communities. It's cosplay. It's trading cards. It's esports. It has its home there. It's LAN party, it's you play yourself, but basically you find like-minded friends. It's primarily offline, right? ESL has a lot of online tournaments. So it's really community at its best physically, way beyond competitive gaming. And then you have FACEIT, which is then came later, but is clearly the online community in the place for your online tournaments. And what we've learned is that ESL wasn't the best home for it. So they're totally interested to keep those three brands alive and grow these communities. They're all connected, and that's the job why the company makes sense, right? It's to connect them all. It's to get all the players within FACEIT to watch the ESL tournaments, to get the best or some of the best ESL tournaments at a DreamHack, and have therefore better content at a DreamHack, and the other way around. So that is the idea behind it. They're separate teams. We're in the lucky position that we can afford to have dedicated teams and people working on those brands. Working on brands costs money. It's a luxury in a good way, but that then again comes with the size and the setup of it as an absolute benefit, and as why we believe we should grow these verticals while they still stick very closely together in how they work.
Yeah, just a couple of final questions, looking ahead kind of into the future. I really want to, there seems to be definitely a long-term vision with the ESL FACEIT Group, which, like you said, is a luxury for certain companies, especially in an esports environment, which is quite tumultuous, to say the least. What is ESL FACEIT Group's long-term goal in the next 5-10 years then? I
mean, the long-term goal, there's two ways to look at it. There's a player way, and that is, this is your place where you play your tournaments online, where you want to be on the biggest stage, or where you go out for a weekend to celebrate gaming. That's it. It's summarized in a more B2B business way. It's beyond gameplay. So it's always a good thing to look about what you do and what you don't do. If you think about what we don't do video games. We don't publish or produce or develop video games. But we do everything beyond, which is, then called beyond gameplay. And that world, we're trying to build globally across the world. And that is the long-term vision. That's where this is going. And that's where we believe we can bring the biggest value to the players and the fans and the industry.
As a final question, we're here at Next World Forum, yes. So I always wanted to do a little bit of a play on Next.
Sure.
What is, in your opinion, then, the next big esports development that's going to be coming?
Good question. It's always three things. There's always a next tournament. There's always a next bigger thing. There's always something that breaks the boundaries of what's there so far. This would be an official announcement day if we do it, so we don't. I think there's always a next game which comes up, which adds community, which enlarges the pie, which makes this a more fascinating and big industry. Don't forget, right, in 2010 we had Counter-Strike and StarCraft as the core games. And then, League of Legends and Dota came in and made it bigger. And then, mobile games came up with Clash Royale, Brawl Stars, Free Fire, Mobile Legends, all of that stuff, they didn't take away, right? Not there. I don't think there's a single player left Counter-Strike for Mobile Legends, but a lot of people came into our industry, which is good for the growth of it. And then Fortnite, PUBG Mobile came in, and so on and so forth. There's always a next genre, there's a next big hit, which hopefully gives us the opportunity to build more stages and run more online competitions. And third, I mean, that is the final goal, right? When do we see the Michael Jordan of esports? So it's really about can we help those talented, young, super successful, smart players to become global superstars? That would be the 3 next questions.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's amazing. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Hopefully you've gone a little bit down memory lane as well.
Absolutely, you brought me back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Appreciate it.